Okay, it's just over to 7 o'clock, so I'll say good evening, everybody. Good evening. And we will crack on with our agenda, looking at item 1 of the Health, Wellbeing, Environment Committee. Item 1 is apologies. I've been made aware of apologies from Councillor Wright. Are there any other additional apologies?
We apologise for coming Richard.
That's right. We'll submit that in minutes. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No, thank you very much. So, item 3, minutes of a previous meeting. Consider the minutes of the last meeting, which is on pages 3 to 8 of your agenda. I'll be happy to take those minutes as accurate.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. So, item 4, that is staff to help and care overview scrutiny committee. I don't think there's anything else to add apart from the report, which is on pages 9 to 12 of your agenda. So, I'll note those minutes from that committee.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, on to item 5, and this is on a supplementary agenda, pages 3 to 40 of a supplementary agenda. That's the Walleys Quarry Odour updates. Obviously, it's a very busy time in Walleys Quarry matters, so I'll hand over to Nessa for that one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll just take you through the report. This update report is in a similar format to what goes to Cabinet in each month, and it's also in the same format that obviously comes to each of these committees. The report principally covers the last 3 months' worth of data, so in June, July and August. However, I'll try and update where I can do in terms of up-to-date currently in September. So in relation to odour complaints, throughout the year there's been peaks and troughs. So we had a peak in complaints in February, then followed by a downward trend in March, back up in April, again back down. What we found throughout July and August is that complaints have been higher than the previous 2 years, July and August. So there has been an upturn in that time period throughout the year. One of the other things that we also collate in terms of odour complaints is, where there's an event, and we don't class those as where we've received more than 10 complaints on any particular day. So in July, there were 13 days where there was an odour event. There were 6 in August, and there's been 1 in September to date. Just in terms of September, I think we reported to Cabinet last week that there have been 15 complaints today. Bringing it up until yesterday, we've received 36 complaints today, which is actually a downward trend. So in terms of the air quality data, obviously we've got the MMF data when we analyse that. One of the things that we do in each of the reports is to look at the percentage exceedance of WHO noise, and that's been set as a threshold for hydrogen sulfide whereby most people would have some level of annoyance. I think what the data shows in terms of the table, and that's at section 2.4, is that all the MMFs, that percentage exceedance of the annoyance factor is higher at the MMF line, which is ongoing in the state, when compared to all the other MMFs. But it also does show a reduction in with 1 week between the 19th and 25th of August showing 0%. In terms of the things, there's also a graph in the report where we correlate both those complaints, as I've just updated, and the percentage exceedance of the mixed level, and you can see through that they correlate really well. When there's high levels of hydrogen sulfide, we get high complaints. When there's low levels, we get low levels of complaints. They do relate throughout that period. The report also updates in terms of the committee of inquiry. That's actually now completed all of the sessions. The report's been collated and will be presented to Council on the 25th of September. I think equally in terms of the report, it also updates because during this time period, the EEA have released their H2AS hydrogen sulfide data adjustment methodology. So I think that's something that the Council and a lot of members of the community have been waiting for a considerable period of time. And this is since the miscalibration of the H2S monitors happened. So that's been provided. There's been a lot of information provided on the EA Engage website, and a lot of it's been duplicated in the report to show how the data's been adjusted and how it actually affects the result. And you can see there's a number of graphs for each of the MNFs to show the time period and also the data period that those adjustments have been undertaken for. I think what follows on from that is that UK HSA have updated their health assessment for 21 to 23 based on that adjusted data. And it's most probably useful for me to just go through the conclusions that they're still recommending in terms of that health assessment from the adjusted data. So they're saying the hydrogen sulfide data up to the end of August 23 shows continuing exposure to the population around the landfill site. Over this period, the 3 closest MMS sites regularly exceed the long-term lifetime health-based exceedance. They then go on to say that the UK HSA strongly recommends that all appropriate measures be taken to reduce the off-site odours from the landfill site, to reduce that's experienced from the landfill. In respect of that methodology, the EA and UK HSA have a virtual public meeting on the 28th of August, and there'll be a transcript of that meeting provided on the EA Engage website. So that's available. In terms of other wider EA updates, we obviously report in terms of the published compliance assessment report. So they're the reports that are issued to the landfill site following intervention or assessment. So there's been 2 compliance assessment reports published or released in terms of this time period, with 1 site inspection visit being undertaken. No non-compliant scores have been issued through those particular fields. I think the other thing of note in terms of this time period, in terms of the month, there's been an awful lot going on. But obviously there was a landfill fire on the 4th of August at approximately 10 p.m. at night, which the Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service successfully tackled and brought that under control in the early hours of the 5th of August. Thanks obviously goes to that service for responding promptly and effectively to bring that fire under control. And statements about the fire have been made by Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service, the EA and Walleys Quarry Limited, and those are in the report from section 2.28. The Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service detailing their investigation that's likely to have been caused accident. And I think just to wrap up, Walleys Quarry have also provided an update on their website on the 5th of September. And they published a statement which is included in a report regarding their application to Staffordshire County Council for pre-application meeting as part of the project. And their wording is to explore options and opportunities to complete the restoration of the landfill site sustainably, making enhancements and alterations to the existing restoration plans. We don't have any further details in relation to what that is at this moment in time, but members will be interested to know that statement. In terms of the report, the appendices are there as they have been before, so the historic complaint data, the historic MNF data, and then also the key performance indicators that we have been reporting both from the Borough Council and Walleys Quarry. So the KPIs for Newcastle are there for June to August, and for Walleys are there for June. So that's my update, and I'm happy to take any questions that I can.
Thank you, Nessa. Do members have any comments or questions on that report? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. You won't be surprised to know that I've got some questions as Silverdale councillor. The virtual meeting you alluded to on the 28th of August, I attended that meeting and I was concerned about the HSA's risk assessment. Thanks for reading out their conclusion that in terms of as strenuous efforts should be made to limit the odours on site. But I asked about their risk assessment in terms of the overall level. They've got it as low before the recalibration and after the recalibration, where it was shown that the HS2 was much higher, they still kept it at low. So I asked, what would the threshold be for it to rise to medium? And I did not get, in my opinion, a satisfactory answer. I was told that's a good question, but I wasn't furnished with an answer. So I would like to ask you, Nesta, whether you've heard anything about that, and is it something we could pursue? And secondly, any updates on, now that we've got permission to take the legal action from the Secretary of State, what's the current update on that, please?
Well, I wasn't at that virtual meeting, so you'll know far more than me, but I do understand that part of the transcript, the questions were also being taken away by the EA, UK HSA, because there was a questionnaire formed on Slido, wasn't there?
Yeah.
I understand that they were preparing some answers for those, so if they don't appear there, then we can ask those questions. So we can do that. And in relation to the legal action, I don't have any further update at this moment in time. It's obviously it's been reported previously to Cabinet and through to Council in terms of the process that we had to go through that. Obviously that is continuing, but I don't have any further updates.
Thank you. And could I just ask one more thing? Do you mind, your indulgence, Chair? You mentioned this week when there was nil or zero complaints. I think it was the 9th to the 15th of September. Do we have any kind of dialogue with the operator or any kind of way of tracking what happens on site when we get these zero complaints? Is there any kind of correlation as to why that would be?
So the zero levels were the percentage exceedance of the WHO over annoyance level at the EMS, where all three stations showed 0%. In terms of complaint, we have a process that every time we have a complaint, that is anonymised to a certain degree and sent to the operator, and they're asked to provide us feedback. So every single complaint they're asked to provide us feedback. So we do that as a matter of course. So we have that engagement. When we have particular peaks, we will then have individual phone calls and say, in terms of to try and investigate this. And then you will have also seen during periods of time when we've had very high complaint levels, we've also asked them to undertake deep dives into that and provide some feedback, or we have worked and we've done some of those deep dives. So it depends on the numbers. When there isn't anything, that's obviously good news, and we tend to do it the other way, that actually we'll try and find problems when there's high complaints.
Thanks, Nesta. I can understand that, but I'm intrigued to know what they're doing when there isn't, when it doesn't go up the level, because that's really what they should be doing all the time. So that's what I'm intrigued about.
I don't have anything that specific in terms of the feedback.
Councillor Wilden.
I may be wrong, so I'd like someone to check it. It seems that the reduction in complaints and odours correlate quite closely with the dates of the public inquiry. Now, call me cynical, but it's a bit of a clue there that something changed while they were in the hot seat and being questioned specifically. The other concern I have is it's not just the odour on site that drifts. I've had a number of people who are from different protest groups who monitor it quite religiously. And there have been lorries turning up with some with no number plates, which is against the law. They don't do a wheel wash, so whatever they're carrying, however noxious, is dragged through the streets in both directions. And a significant number of lorries, again with no number plates, but they have an Irish logo on the side. So that rubbish has come quite a good way, and heaven knows what's in it, and there doesn't seem to be any checking. This is according to reports that I received from people who are actually monitoring it very closely. I think that there's more questions than we're getting answers from the Board of Walleys Quarry at the moment, and I just wonder how extensive we dive into what's going on outside just the odour.
maybe if I can try and take your first point, in
There
terms
was a
of
lot, sorry.
that's okay, if I miss anything, come back to me. But in terms of, is there any correlation between the committee, of inquiry and Odour complaints coming in?
Dates.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that in terms of factors. What I can say is that when I look at the air quality data compared to the complaints, they correlate very well. So equally at that time period, the actual measurements of hydrogen sulfide were lower, so I would have expected the complaints to be lower if weather changed during that time period. And those are some of the factors. I have not looked in terms of is that a correlation or how I could even prove that's a correlation. But what I can say is from the data sets that we do look at, that there are links. So hydrogen sulfide levels are low, complaints tend to be low, and that's summarised in the graphs. But we look at those in more detail. If I go out and I'm measuring and monitoring, I will go and take that assessment. I'll note the time of day. I'll clinically follow that up and see what it was in terms of the MMF. So I can see those things, and I will link those to my personal experience. So I think from the data set, I can see that those in terms of functions. I don't think I can comment on that. In terms of vehicles coming in and out, obviously there's a whole regulatory regime in terms of waste inputs, waste transportation, and all the corresponding notes that have to go with those consignments and the licenses from individual organisations. I am aware that the EEA have done some spot checks on those. I think we've reported those in previous cabinet reports. I think they've updated those in terms of their EEA engaged site. I think if you have particular details, happy if you want to send those to me, and then I will pass those on to the individual organisations.
Go ahead.
One more question.
Go ahead, councillor.
Again, it's the protest groups who seem to feel that they need to have an EA, it's usually mine, or some few of the other councillors who are in target wards. They did do a freedom of information to try and get some idea about the fire, why it happened, what they did about it, other than the responses that were given at the inquiry, because Walleys Quarries would turn up to that. And I've seen the feedback that they were sent from the freedom of information. I think it's about 2 or 3 sentences. And then the rest are page after page, black page after black page after black page of redacted text. I worry when there's that much redaction taking place as to the propriety of information that they should be giving. And that's, I think they dwell between saints and sinners. They're saints when they're put under the microscope. And then when the microscope is switched off, they're become sinners. But again, I could be being cynical. I'm just concerned of how much information they've actually been forthcoming about the fire. I did visit the fire station and talk to a group, a lot of us, some other councillors, and talked to a group of firemen who attended the fire, and they had their own observations and suggestions as to cause and why it happened and what was done and so on. But I am quite cynical about the responses that we get from Walleys. They tend to be quite covert with all the information. Do you have any more? Or how do you think we can get it from them?
And I don't have any more specific details in relation to the fire. Obviously, that was work that was undertaken by Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service, and then obviously the EEA followed up as well, and they did some visits. So I don't have any more other than what has been released already in relation to that. Obviously, I don't know who's responded to the FOI or to organisations you're speaking about, but obviously in terms of freedom of information and redacting those things where it is personal information or it is restricted information, then those will be redacted. It will be up to that individual organisation to undertake and to take that judgment. Not seen it.
Okay, class one of you, Nesta. On 2.17, it said about the MMFs and how they're changing the names of them and slight change to locations on some. We've got the pumping station issue again, where they're talking about because the Severn Trent works that are going on the pumping station, which have again been delayed slightly, means that would remain in the same place, but they still haven't said where this will be moved to. But they've been saying that for nearly a year. Have we had contact with them about suggesting locations of that? Have we got any update from them on where they may be reciting this? Is there any possibility we can use Borough Council land or work with partners? Because I'm very concerned, given their record with that, we'll get to the point where the works from Severn Trent start and they'll say, oh, we haven't found a place. We've had a year to do it, we haven't found a place. So if there's any information you give us on that, that would be helpful.
In relation to those, obviously the MMFs have changed in terms of Barry's Way, the location of that has been changed and that's been transferred over. In terms of the Silverdale one, yes, it was due to be moved and then the works have been put back. So it is currently where it is and that's likely to remain in that position for a while. I have tried to, or I haven't been engaging with the EEA and equally I have looked at Borough Council owned land that we can try and have as an alternative for when we know that works would happen. So we'll continue with that engagement to try and find a suitable site. We're very aware that the members and the public use that data, would like to maintain those monitoring stations. So we'll try as hard as we can to try and support any future relocation of that, but I don't have an alternative.
Thank you. Councillor Willis, do you have another question? Yep.
Do we have any assurances since the equipment that measured the emission status too? Do we have any assurances that these are regularly tested now? Because when they were faulty, they weren't tested, which is why it went on for a long length of time and they had to sort of redo it all. Do we have any assurances from Walleys, Quarry or Red Industries that, or the Environment Agency, even anybody, to say that they're tested regularly to show that they're given the right data?
So the MMS are owned and operated in terms of by the Environment Agency. Now, my understanding in terms of the miscalibration was about the calibration of the H2S analyzer. So in terms of the analyzer there, they have a process that's in place. That's been externally validated, and we have confirmation that from this September, when they were all changed over, that those results are reliable and there are systems and checks in place to ensure that they are adequately covered. So the EEA provided that assurance.
Right, thank you. If there are no further questions, I think we're happy to accept that report and move on to the next item. So we've got item 6, which is the Sustainable Environment Strategy Update, which can be found on pages 13 to 112 of your agenda. Yes, it's quite large. Is it? You take it to this one. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Yes, this is just really an update on where we're currently at Sustainable Environment Strategy. So we undertook a refresh this year, which was approved by Cabinet in June. And we'll just go through the main points of that. So the original Sustainable Environment Strategy was adopted in December 2020. And again, that was a landmark document at the time which set out the Council's commitment to sustainable environment. And there was an overarching strategy under which there were a number of linked and related plans and initiatives. There were 4 priority outcomes at that time: to reduce reliance on the use of fossil fuels, to reduce carbon and other damaging emissions, to minimise waste and recycling, and offset residual carbon emissions. Last year, in 2023, The council commissioned further expertise in developing what we call the costing roadmap to net zero. So that was to take that strategy and actually start to turn it into an action plan. And that action plan focused on the council's own operations in the state to reach its goal of net zero by 2030. All operational buildings had an in-depth survey and analysis undertaken, again looking at the fabric of the buildings, heating, lighting and infrastructure, current insulation and energy consumption. In addition, the council's vehicle fleet has been subject to an in-depth analysis as well, which includes a 10-year rolling fleet replacement programme. And extracts from that report are given in the pack that you have. The development of the roadmap was a strategic overview and gave some priority areas for action and milestones up to 2023. And effectively that sets us out into 3 distinct areas. So from 2022 to 23 was to get going. So that was to understand what needed to be done, and that's what the roadmap has done. Between 2023 and 2027, we are on our way. So the expectation is that low carbon is the norm, and we're doing well on our journey to net zero. And then between 2028 and 2030, we look to achieve that goal. So there's been quite a lot of progress to date, and it was clear that the sustainable environment strategy, once the roadmap had been completed, needed to be updated. So that was the work that was done following that. So progress to date, and there's a number of things that are really positive. So we've made significant progress so far, not only with the reduction of the roadmap, but actually in carbon reductions. And obviously the previous SES was delivered through the plan, but as I say, there was a need to effectively update that, and that's what this document does, which is in your back. And it's worth just noting, I think, the positive actions that have been commissioned and completed so far. So we've introduced the use of hydrogen treated vegetable oil, or HVOs. It's no fuel to replace diesel as a clean alternative in the heavy goods vehicle fleet. And that's reduced carbon emissions from those vehicles by 90%. We planted, well, it's well above this now, but just under 15,000 trees in the first 4 phases of the urban tree planting strategy over 21 sites. And we provided sustainability training to all employees and members of the council. And we are now undertaking enhanced carbon literacy training, which will take place for this group here. It's already been done for senior management and some cabinet members. And I'm pleased to say, actually, we reduced the council's own carbon emissions by 68% since 2009-10, and actually a massive 35% compared to last year. So those are figures that we've literally just completed over the last few days. The big reduction for the last 12 months is mainly due to the HVO fuel and some savings in electricity and gas. So it's also just worth noting that the council's an active partner in the Staffordshire Sustainability Board, so that is made up of senior members and officers with responsibility for sustainability and climate change in all the local authorities in Staffordshire. And there's a number of base pledges that were agreed by that group, which this council is actively engaged in, and I think we are currently achieving them all, so that's positive as well. We're further looking at site and fleet decarbonisation. So that includes the electrification of the depot to allow for more electric powered vehicles to be used. We're focusing on the Jubilee 2 Leisure Centre, and again we've got a process of decarbonisation just through the installation of more LED lighting, looking at pool cover and research into the heating of the pool. We transitioned the market office to a warehouse, which has reduced its carbon emissions to zero. And again, we're looking at decarbonising Gisgrove Town Hall through air source heat pumps, LED lighting and more efficient smart controls. And we've recently upgraded the lease building, the Philip Astley Centre, 23 to 24 Mary Street, and that is now a net zero site, which is tremendous achievement as well. So in terms of what we're bringing you tonight, the updated sustainable environment strategy effectively now sets out our framework for collective action on climate change to achieve the council's ambitions to become net zero for its own estate and operations by 2030 and for the borough by 2050. Council, residents and businesses and visitors all have collective responsibility for solving this issue. And again, the delivery plan, strategy delivery plan benefits the health and well-being of the local environment as well. So there are 4 areas that, again, we're looking at. So the built environment and energy, travel and transport, natural environment at sea, station and engagement and behaviour change. And again, those 4 listed items will be embedded within the strategy. Again, the document will now act as a push for the council to drive forward its actions listed in the delivery plan, and the document itself will be a living document, which means that it will evolve and learn over time as actions are achieved and new actions are created. And it's really important to say that it has to be a living document. And again, the council will engage to endeavour as much as possible with the community to ensure the actions that are undertaken are inclusive and set out as a framework for collective action on climate change to achieve the council's ambitions. And again, the council will endeavour to engage as much as possible in this area. So the revised SES has set out a number of objectives to drive the actions forward. Again, as I say, to facilitate the development of a net zero council by 2030 through its own built environment fleet, to facilitate the development into a net zero borough by 2050 due to decarbonisation of houses and businesses and transport, and to promote the natural environment in the borough to increase biodiversity, carbon sequestration and storage, develop a service-focused strategy and delivery plan in the council to engage council staff to deliver the service-owned actions, and again to engage with residents, businesses and visitors through online and physical communication networks to create sustainable behaviour change within the borough. In terms of what we're doing as services within the council, so each council service or each directorate has now got a working group, and that is to effectively aid and drive forward the actions of the delivery plan, ensure those services responsible for the transition towards a more sustainable future of the borough. We're suggesting then a biannual review of the committee for the strategy and the plan, and that will be updated with new information and action and progress and other additions. And then each subsequent year, the strategy and delivery plan will be updated with new information and again, actions and progress, other additions, and then taken through the corporate decision-making process. So currently there's 8 working groups, each focused on the different directorates, as I've said, services within the council, and that includes commercial delivery, regulatory services, neighbourhood delivery, sustainable environment, IT and digital, legal and governance, planning, recycling and waste operations, and street scene. And these working groups will identify the relevant actions from the main delivery and service plan and then develop actions for reducing carbon in their own areas. Again, just to ensure the strategy and delivery plan continue to stay relevant up to 2050, it will be constantly updated and reviewed as I've set out. So there's a copy of the revised and now approved SES within your pack. I hope you're all able to maybe some reading of that. And again, you know, we've tried to make it as user friendly and easy to follow as possible. And again, Cabinet asked that this revised plan was, and the progress I've just outlined was referred to this group for your comments. That's gone through. I appreciate it's quite a meaty and heavy document, but happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Over to you, councillors. Yeah, Councillor Rees.
Hi, thanks, Andrew. Thanks for taking us through that. Obviously, we do know lots of kind of great stuff around this. It's just a question about 3.7 about engaging with residents, businesses, and visitors about the engagement really and behaviour change. Just not necessarily a comment on the report. It's a wider question about whether the council have considered engaging with local businesses, something businesses like kind of takeaways around single-use plastics and around alternatives, almost like a kind of campaign. Whether that's something we consider, because that seems to be kind of quite not necessarily easy here, but we're kind of quite a contained borough, really.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, I totally agree. So I think there's a number of things now, particularly with the small businesses. So aside from this, from next year, from a waste perspective, they will be required to separate waste for recycling, which means households have been doing for a number of years. And there's probably very little awareness at the moment. So we did put a flyer out with when the business rates went out earlier in the year, but we now want to build on that engagement. And you're quite right. There's a number of aspects that we can do that. We're also looking at refreshing our commercial waste service. That will come with it. It's again a sort of communications campaign along with it, which will build in some of the sustainability sides as well. So it's really important. You're quite right to raise it. I think the challenge around the wider business sector and residents is a challenge, but we need to find ways of communicating easily. We've just launched a sustainable environment Facebook page, which is gaining momentum. So we're pushing what we can through social media, but I think its ideas really now around, we're thinking of maybe having an online forum over the next few months, and also potentially looking at some form of drop-in type service, maybe using the Guildhall a couple of times a year as well. But we need to start on that journey and then learn from it, because effectively we've got 120,000 residents in the borough that we need to get the message through to. So you're quite right to raise it. It's a really important piece of work.
I think in terms of businesses, maybe kind of engaging, creating kind of community champions that makes the business sense for them as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've considered, and I think we will do this, is you'll be aware of the food hygiene rating stars.
Yes.
So that's been hugely successful over the years. So one of the things that we're looking at is potentially replicating something like that for sustainability, and a business can therefore earn stars for whatever it does, and hopefully that will engender some ownership and actually, a good marketing tool for them as well.
Okay, thanks.
So Wilder.
Sorry, I seem to be the pain of the night. I'm looking at 3.10 and it mentions planning. I have no idea about planning. I read the documents from afar, but it doesn't involve me. And so one of the things I was wondering is if there's any liaison between what you're doing and planning and granting, where they grant development possibilities for the construction industry, whether there's any possibility of building in requirements for non-fossil fuels for heating, like solar panels. That's stuff that they put in the ground that makes you warm. thermos. Couldn't speak without it. And that sort of thing. I mean, it would seem to me to be common sense to liaise between the two groups so that sort of thing happens. So you're bringing it down even more for future proofing it, in fact.
I'll bring my colleague here, but yes, I mean, there's the working groups are there for us to have those conversations. But I think Craig will outline in terms of what the council's doing in terms of what you've just raised. But yes, it's really important that we work very closely. We do in terms of individual planning applications anyway. We're absentee on those. We try to do that in a positive way. But there are obviously a lot wider, far-reaching issues as well.
Yeah, you know, somebody's going to build, I don't know, 120 houses. It's a requirement there that they think of other methods rather than sticking a gas boiler, which is the norm. It's asking because it's a gap in my knowledge.
Through you, Chair, yes. So one of the things that we do at the moment is obviously work closely with Andrew and his colleagues to ensure that our existing local plan policies take account of climate change and carbon reduction initiatives, which is what you're talking about. And obviously we've now got our emerging new local plan, which has a raft of policies in there which are aimed at specifically doing exactly what you're talking about. So I hope that once the plan is formally adopted, we can start to introduce more of a approach which is in line with the environment strategy as set out tonight. So I give you the comfort that we are doing the right thing.
Okay, Councillor Richards.
Hi. I've had a look through, and it looks like quite a comprehensive report. There is being Roger's kind of, not going to like this, but being part of the community centre and being aware of the different community buildings, there's a kind of a note, assign appropriate capital and external funding for remaining council-owned sites and emissions. Does that include the community centres, or does that come under them being business buildings? These are the responsible organisations deciding. I just asked that.
Yes, so in terms of community centres, yes, they would fall into the latter.
Right.
As commercial entities.
Okay.
I think our thinking at the moment is that we would support community centres in looking at things, and actually, if I go back to 2022, all of them were assessed under some funding we had, funding we had under the carbon reduction, non-fossil fuel reduction funding. Each of those community centres will have those reports. So it was an analysis done probably 2022. It's probably about just 2 years ago. Right, they didn't go out, and that would give recommendations for each individual building in terms of what they could do.
Okay.
We will see if we find copies, if there's one specific that we've got.
I'm just thinking that, sorry, these are community buildings run by kind of obviously volunteers in particular. And I think this is kind of out of their scope of expertise. And obviously it's still owned by Newcastle Borough Council. So therefore, really that would impact on your net zero emissions because they're still owned by yourselves.
It does. This is where it gets complicated. So because they're not operated by us, they don't affect our carbon footprint to the council's operations.
Any more questions or comments from councillors? No, in that case, I think we're happy to take that report and move on to the next item, which is item 7, Neighbourhood Delivery Team Scope and Purpose, which is page 113 to 122. And Roger, you take us through that one. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And so this report's been prompted by a number of questions from members at various council meetings and committee meetings where people have said, you know, what is neighbourhood delivery? What does it do? Who do we report issues to, you know, in our wards and neighbourhoods? So what we thought was we'd produce this guide, which hopefully gives a bit of background on how the team was set up, and then some guidance to members on what it does and how to report an issue if we've got one. So the neighbourhood delivery team, which started off in life as the mobile multifunctional team, and MMF, not to be confused with Nestus, MMF's in the report that you had earlier. It was set up as part of the One Council transformation programme in 2022. It was one of the key building blocks of that programme. And the idea, the concept was to take the existing enforcement and community safety functions that were spread across lots of different teams and departments in the council, group them all together into one team, and then multi-skill that team so that those officers, if you were doing car park enforcement was your main job, you could actually learn to do other enforcement activities like stray dogs, fly tipping, abandoned vehicles, travel impoundments, so the whole range and gamut of enforcement activity. And the idea is that then with a team that's multi-skilled, there's more flexibility and resilience in that, in being able to flex and adapt to things that crop up on a day-to-day basis. So again, as background, we looked across the teams across the council, and we picked out the ones. Sorry, we got appendix 1 in your report. That's the actual guide that we're looking at. So we had car park enforcement in there. We had community safety in there. Some of the parks and open spaces enforcement work in there. Town ranger who works in Newcastle town. Environmental enforcement, which was mainly things like fly tipping and stray dogs. Litter enforcement officer that you may have seen around the town issuing expanding notices, and also the pest control officer. So, as I say, those roles were grouped together and recast into generic, multi-purpose neighbourhood delivery officers. And also, as a sort of latest iteration, we've merged the town centres and community solutions team into that neighbourhood delivery team as well. That's not so much enforcement, but it's all a part of the team. And Michelle, who's sitting to my right here, is the business manager for the neighbourhood delivery team. So one of the first things we did when we grouped that team together was do a skills gap analysis and have a look at a programme of training to cross-skill that team. And we've made really good progress in that over the last year to 18 months. And now, you know, the team members are able to cross-function and take on different activities when the need arises. So there's a table in the guide which goes through the sort of main functions and then breaks it down into some of the sort of different activities. So we take community safety first, partnership liaison and management. So we work a lot with the police, as you know, tackling things like antisocial behaviour or whatnot. We're part of the joint operations group that looks at issues across the neighbourhoods and again how we can come up with interventions to help tackle that. We look at policy and protocol development, so things like the travel encampment protocol that we have, which enables us to quickly deal with travel encampments when we get that and get court dates and get things moving as quickly as possible. We look at funding bits, project delivery, case management and evidence collation. That's a really key part of that job is, when we're having problems, wherever it is, whether it's in Newcastle, Case Grove, or in the wards and neighbourhoods. People say there are problems until we can actually get them reported, collate the evidence that then enables us to move on and take effective enforcement action. So there's a real education piece around that, being able to talk to the businesses and residents and say, please report it. Got channels that report it to, and the more we get reported, the bigger a case builds, and we can then look at interventions through things like the job and community action, stuff like that. So that's part of this message is please, report things through the right channels. Antisocial behaviour case management, we do that, and also tenant controls, business liaison, and evidence gathering. But a public space protection order in Newcastle Town Centre and in a lot of the parks and open spaces, which again gives us enforcement powers to tackle issues when they crop up. We work with other partners like the Immigration Service, Trade and Standards to do joint operations. We did one last year in the town centre, again targeting some of the mini marts, and we successfully seized a number of sort of counterfeit goods and covered some other issues that we're going to the relevant authorities. We run the safe space in Newcastle on Friday night, which again was designed to protect and help women and girls get home safely on a night out, or if they need support and help, there's something to go in the town centre. And the street medics support that as well, so they triage people in nighttime economy, and with the aim of taking the pressure off the people can be triaged and then sent home safely rather than presenting at the hospital, and that's benefit. And we've also got the CCTV contract management, which is done in this team, coverage across Newcastle, including the subways, and it gets monitored at the monitoring stations. So we're trying to all linked to the police, so that if there's an issue crops up. So that's the community safety side. We then have the environmental education and enforcement arm of the team. And again, work policy and protocol development in there around things like, some of you members will be aware of the things like bins being left out in the streets, which has been an issue in a number of wards. We've now developed a protocol for dealing with that. We're rolling that out across the borough in conjunction with members who are helping spread that message to residents. Again, the idea is, enforcement should be the last resort, and we can work together with yourselves, members, and communities to try and tackle that problem. We want to be issuing expected notices, but it's there as a last resort. We can't resolve the problem through a sort of educational approach. Business advice visits, school or community group educational visits, and what fix the litter enforcement goals that I talked about earlier. And again, with FPNs as a last resort, if people continues to drop litter, we need to have some enforcement power to actually tackle that. Talking to businesses about their trade waste, again in conjunction with Andrew's team, trying to get people signed up to good trade waste services, whether it's ourselves preferable or other reputable trade waste people, because trade waste in the town centre in particular causes other issues. It's used for people, it can potentially cause fires, it can be used by people who are homeless or rough sitting, slipping. So we try to make sure that trade waste is properly controlled, bins are locked, and it's not spilling out into the street. It's part of the work of the team. The Police Space Protection Orders in parks mentioned, fly tipping investigation and fixed point moves for prosecution. So again, that's been a lot of work on that recently, where in the past, fly tipping may have sat there for a long time while we tried to figure out who was responsible for moving it and how we could take enforcement action. And really, if tracks covered by fly tipping, it becomes a big issue for the local community. So what we want to do is get rid of it as quickly as possible. Now, a new system where Andrew's team in street scene will go out and assess the fly tipping, look for evidence, rummage through with and find names, addresses, or witness statements. That's then passed through to the neighbourhood delivery team to pursue prosecution, and then street scene clear the fly tipping way, so it's out of the way, and in the community garden suffering from that. Also looking at household waste duty of care, so again, when people pay the man in the van to take their stuff away, it's making sure that they know that that man in the van is properly licensed and it's going to a proper tip and not ending up somewhere where it shouldn't. Also in the delivery team, we've got the car parking, the off-street car parking enforcement. So the council's car parks, not the on-street, which is done by county council, charged with city council, like that. The borough council do the car park enforcement. And then annual establishment licence inspections is another on that business. Following report on that, well, Charter will pick up some of that as well. Then other neighbourhood issues that again are issues for communities, things like abandoned vehicles, which the team deal with, unauthorised encampments, stray dogs, untidy gardens, pest control, and then minor fly tipping and waste issues, overgrown vegetation, fly posting, rough sleeping materials. They're all things that the team can deal with both from the enforcement point of view and through the rangers, the 3 rangers, the town ranger, the Kidfield ranger and the neighbourhood ranger. So those guys can work across ownership boundaries. So rather than spend days and weeks trying to find out who owns a piece of land or who's responsible for it, if it's a small, sort of fairly quick fix issue, the rangers can just go in and do it. And something they've seen in the Facebook feeds, particularly from the Kidfield rangers, very good at posting pictures and before and after pictures. Here's something and it's gone. It's just a quick response to service that the community appreciate. And then other duties, things like reporting and logging highway defects with the county council. So again, when our teams are out and about, if they see things, they report them through to other partners and agencies if it's appropriate, and then providing support in other teams for implementation. And then, as I mentioned, we've got a landscape community team and the town centres team. I'm not going to talk about what they do because it's not sort of relevant to the enforcement activities of the main part of the team. And then what's not in scope, again, just for clarity, so the neighbourhood delivery team isn't responsible for core street cleansing and grounds maintenance functions. That's the street scene team in Andrew's service. So they do all the cyclical street sweeping, litter bin emptying, litter picking, engine shrub pruning, tree working, grass cutting, and they do graffiti and flag posting from council assets as well, and the bigger accumulation supply tipping. But the neighbourhood delivery team can kind of add value to that by working across the ownership boundaries and tackling some of the low level stuff that streets you might not get to, because they've got such a packed schedule of core work. So, it's a good across the departmental partnership approach to and it's more efficient. And in your guide, there's an amended support document which you can have a look at, which talks about the joint working between the streets and the team. Moving on to the performance monitoring and management then. So again, we developed a dashboard on Power BI, which is a really helpful tool, captures data on the demand that we're getting. So every time we get a report, a service request, that's captured and logged onto the dashboards. We can map that and see where hotspots are popping up, where the highest demand is for various services. And we can then target our resources to try and deal with that. And ideally, you get upstream of it and try and deter it. And so that data-led approach is really helpful. And then in terms of how to report these things, again, in your wards and you're talking to your residents and businesses, the quickest and best way to report is to go onto the council's website and click on report it and pick the service that you need. There's a form pops up, it's very straightforward. Fill that in, submit it, and it goes directly to the right team straight away, and that can be programmed into the work program for the day or the week to get through there. And then, as I say, using the dashboards, we're monitoring that performance and data over the course of the year. Again, because it's quite a new service, we're still building up that background and understanding where all the demands are. But by the end of this year, we should have a really good baseline. And in terms of putting some metrics into there, we're focusing on fly tipping at the moment and recording number of fly tipping incidents, how long it takes us to clear it. And at the moment, we're on about 6 days, which I think is pretty good to be able to report to clearance. The percentage of fly tips where we can find enough evidence to progress enforcement action is low. That's just unfortunate. It depends on whether we can find any evidence or not. But as I said earlier, the main thing is the tipping gets cleared away, is applied there, nuisance for the community. So, we like to be able to take more enforcement action, but if we haven't got the evidence there, at least the problem is being taken away from you. And then the other metric we're using is the number of external notices per issue for fly tipping offences. Something like doing, trying wherever we can to actually take enforcement action as a so that's a quick run through the the scope and the purpose of the Neighbourhood meeting, and obviously I'm happy to take any questions.
Right, thank you very much. Should we start with Councillor Barker?
I'd like to ask, I mean, I know how well Scrutiny work because I run my very famous one-stop shop in Cheston. Now, it would be very helpful if we knew, I don't know about the other councillors, but certainly for me, for my shop workers, what, sorry Ian, where are you? It's the county council, what people feel let down by. So, is there any way you can give us information? I'm not saying the borough never do anything wrong, because I'll get told off about that. But county council, if you look round, it's a disgrace. Don't they do weed sorting now? Do they? I mean, I'm asking you, I mean, your borough. But if you walk round, the problem is the borough council get all the blame for all the mess on the roads and that, the weeds. I could take you to where the weeds are like that up the lamppost. So I'll be having a word with you, Councillor Wilkes, after. And I don't think the message is out there what the borough are responsible for and what county council are responsible for. Because I can tell you now, and I work a lot in my community, Borough Council gets all the blame, and I'm always there. I think you'll put me on your pay list because I'm always defending. That isn't borough, that's county. So I'll have to have a word with the county councillor then.
There's a reported app that you can report things on.
I do that.
Say, oh, they're not.
We do it, but that doesn't tell community people, Ian.
But it does if you report it and I've got a reference number, I can chase it up. But if it's not reported in the first place, like most of it is put on Facebook, and nothing's reported, then nothing's going to happen.
I don't do Facebook. But what I'm saying is, people in communities, not just where I live, people in communities, when you say report it here, report it there, I'm sorry, they go vacant. And I don't mean that in a rude way, but they don't want to report, they want it done. And when you're a councillor, they always come to you and say, what are you going to do about this? Well, I can't do anything about if it's your area. I'll be on the phone too. Thank you.
That's easy one to start with, Roger. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Yeah, I understand, and it is difficult for residents, because there are so many different agencies and organisations working across the borough council, county council, Aspire, others. And like I say, residents just want a problem solved. They aren't interested in whose responsibility is. But just in terms of information, there's a couple of things. There's information on the borough's website. So when you do go to record something, say it's fly tipping or grass cutting or weed control or whatever, it does give information there that says, the borough council are responsible for X, Y, and Z. Staffordshire County Council are responsible for the B and C. So there is information there. If people go onto the website and want to report an issue, they should get, signposted to the right place. And also on the telephones, if people ring up to report something, the customer hub advisors will say, you know, look, actually that's a county council issue, or that's an aspire housing issue. So there is, again, assistance there for the residents to be able to direct their inquiries to the right place.
Could I just bring the Spire always get the Spire reported. Sanctuary housing have an awful lot of houses. I know because I'm always moaning at them, but you know, so I'm going to protect Aspire a bit because it isn't always there. People just think, like they do Borough Council, they don't think a county council when they're leaving all this stuff on the footpaths. One of my pet hates, they leave it for I still call them the ragbow man, but they leave it there for somebody else. Thank you, I'll shut up now.
All right, any other councillors got a question? We'll go to Councillor Brown first.
Thank you, Chair. I was really interested to hear you say, Roger, that there's some kind of service for picking up fly tipping that isn't on council land rather than going into who owns it, because for nearly 2 years now I've had a situation on Heritage Park, Baxter Court, where there's a little pocket of land that doesn't belong to the council, it belongs to Homes England, and they just will not pick up this rubbish. There was also at the same property an issue about trees, and the trees actually were on land that belonged to the council, and that was sorted. But the strip of land that belonged to Homes England, I cannot get anything done about it. This has been going on for 2 years. I've lost count of the number of emails. So could you just refresh what you said about did you mention this as a ranger that can go out and do this kind of thing? Just refresh us on that, please.
Yeah, it depends on the scale of it. So what the rangers can do, if it's a couple of lap bars, you know, or some broken glass, some cheap tins or whatever, the ranger can pick that up rather than get into the sort of long, you know, debate about whose responsibility is. The idea is that they can just clear that away. I don't know the size and the scale of this issue that we're talking about at Heritage Park.
It's a bit bigger than that, but it's not huge. It's probably 2 black bin bags, and it's you know, an umbrella for a patio set that's been done there. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the key thing is we can obviously remove that, and obviously that's a really good thing for the community. But the other thing we need to do is obviously make people aware, and the people who own these small pockets of land, they have a responsibility to clear that land. So what we will do is obviously, in the first instance, we will obviously then start making engagement with those landowners to make them aware that their responsibilities moving forward. That is fantastic. Thank you very much.
I think, you know, it's a good point that Michelle makes is sometimes it's a bit of a gesture to start with these privately owned alleyways or pieces of land, you know, we can do small cleanup, but the important bit is to then, as Michelle's just said, engage with the landowner and say, we've done this as it's not our responsibility as a council to do it. You now know who you are and
Yes.
where you are, you know, it's your responsibility to keep that clean and then free from tipping in the future. And if there is a future, it's still funding to you to say you need to clear this up, because otherwise we do have enforcement powers that we can then move on to as well after as well.
Thank you for that. Chair, could I just ask one more quick question?
Sure.
Yeah. I noticed on the report, thank you for all the work you're doing, but on page, where is it, 117, you talk about a reduction of staffing of 0.5 full-time equivalent, and then 2 years later, you talk about when it was reorganised to be Neighbourhood Delivery Team, 8 full-time entrants. So I'm just clarifying, are they 2 different things, or have we lost staff to provide these services?
2 different things. So I think we had one person who was a part-time member of staff that's retired since we set up the team, and we didn't replace that role. Because as I said earlier, when we've multi-skilled everyone and trained everyone up, we're more resilient and we're able to deal with different issues. And then 8 FT are the new team that's joined the neighbourhood delivery teams, the landscaping community and town centres cohort. So they've joined the team recently.
That's really good to hear. Thank you.
Councillor Rees?
Thanks. Roger, again, it's around fly tipping household waste. We had an issue that you may be aware of in Orchard Street and Wolstanton. That was initially raised with me on the 12th of June and I reported the following day. We didn't have any progress. Councillor Gorton, my colleague in Wolstanton, raised it for council on the 24th of July and met with David Hutchinson on the 11th of August. I was on holiday, so I couldn't meet. And then we saw some kind of action taken. It was a terrible mess. I mean, it really was. And I'm just wondering why it was that. I suppose there's two things there, really. Why was that delay and not getting any kind of progress reports as a councillor who reports it? Because in that during the time when we didn't really see any action taken, got residents kind of saying what's happening, and I couldn't give them any updates. Yeah, it's private land again, isn't it? Around about the length and width of these tables here.
Yes, it's a strip of private land, as you say. So apologies if it felt that you weren't being kept updated. There was work going on, and again, this is more to do with people's domestic bins. It wasn't classed as fly tipping because it was domestic recycling bins that were being left out, but it attracted.
But there was a washing machine and
it did attract it. And again, the neighbourhood ranger was keeping an eye on that, did periodic tidies up, while we were trying to track down the landowner and deal with it. We stick up the bins, as you might have seen, as a first step. So again, we looked to plunge in immediately and clear all that stuff away, because those recycling bins are residents somewhere. We want them to bring them back into the property and use them properly and take them back in. So there was a period of monitoring the situation, doing some small scale tidying up, before it got to the point where I think it eventually we lifted all the bins. And again, we found out who the landowner is, got in touch with them and said, hey, you need to be looking after this piece of land and making sure it doesn't get used.
So that's really good news. After saying on another occasion, we reported some potentially hazardous waste, and that got sorted really quickly afterwards. Just one more question. It's just around allotments. And do we know how many people I'm guessing we do, how many people we have on the waiting list for allotments in the borough?
I don't have the number to hand. I know we have got quite a large waiting list.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure what the number is. I
suppose tied to that is how often the allotments are monitored, and I'm thinking in relation to that, allotment plots that are not tended, and have fallen into disrepair. Do we know how many plots we've got like that, and whether any action has been taken? And I think in terms of the waiting list, people really need to get plots.
Yeah, they do periodic inspections. It's another task that has to be done alongside all the other tasks that have to be done in the team. But it is done periodically, and if there's a non-cultivation issue, people are written to and warned, asked to pick it up. There's a process we go through before we then evict people from lots and then make them available to be let again. But yeah. There is one.
When you say periodically, it's how many times do you make that?
Not sure. I'd have to check. But it's a couple of times a year. We used to do it sort of spring and autumn. I think.
Yeah.
To see how it's going. Or reactively, if somebody reports an issue, we go in.
Okay.
Yeah, the question, Councillor Wheeldon? Yeah, go ahead.
I think Newcastle under Lyme is a fantastic place to live. It's very green. It's even green down in the town as much as it can be. I think it's absolutely brilliant. So when I'm driving around the borough, not just my own ward, but the borough as well, I see an awful lot of cars parked on grass verges. Now, two things spring to mind. One is we pay an awful lot of money and do an awful lot of work to make sure those grass verges are maintained and look pristine, because it enhances not just the houses, but the whole street, road, avenue. But it's also very difficult for people with pushchairs, prams, mobility aids, little mobility cars or Zimmer frames or whatever they happen to be taking a walk with. It's a crossover really between green spaces and highways, I probably think. But I know that there are other boroughs throughout the country who actually make it an offence to park on pavements, to park on grass verges. And I know this committee can't do anything about it, but sometimes it helps to cascade things upwards as well as downwards. So I'd just like your opinion on that, please.
Thanks, councillor. Tends to be a highway issue. As I said in my report, the borough council are responsible for off-street parking enforcement. So that's where in the council's car parks, but on-street parking is a county council function. So
They're not really on street parking though. They tend to be half on, half off, or a lot of the time I've seen whole cars regularly parked completely across a grass verge. Now, because it can be a pedantic noise sometimes, and we pay to maintain those grass verges, I'm on the cusp of criminal damage here. I don't want to be vicious.
again, it's a highway verge for the most part. So you see, we pay, the county council to pay the borough to cut the grass. But it's a county council function, I'm afraid. It's not something that the borough council can take any enforcement action against less the borough council.
Okay, any more on this one? Right, then back to the report. Yes. So, looking at item 8, which is animal welfare strategy, which is on pages 123 to 138 of the agenda. And is it your one, Michelle? Oh, Roger again. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So this one was prompted by a motion which came to council in January this year. Chair, that puts it forward. And it was about concerns around giving the blind animals as prizes on council land. Thankfully, that practice, we think, stopped quite a long time ago, particularly, I think, people were thinking of goldfish at fairgrounds and whatnot. So that doesn't tend to happen anymore. But what it's done is given us the opportunity to sort of reiterate that, and have a look at, making sure that all our land assets are used responsibly when it comes to animal welfare. There were also a motion, I think, to prepare an animal welfare charter to sort of reiterate the council's position on this, and also to maybe write to the government urging a national ban on the giving of live animals as prizes when right land. So, as I say, that's prompted a piece of work to draft an animal welfare charter, which is in your packs tonight, and we'll take any questions on that later on. But in drafting that, we've done, say, Michelle's done a great piece of work on that. We've benchmarked that against other authorities in the West Midlands, just to see what goes on elsewhere. We've looked at it through the lens of the council's powers and duties in relation to animal welfare, which are, quite narrow and limited. So I think it's important for members to know that the main issues with neglect and cruelty to animals tend to be the domain of people like the RSPCA and the police. So we are not saying that we're going to now go out, crusading around the borough and looking to find issues like this and take action. What we are going to do is make sure that we're doing the right things where we have the powers and duties to do that. We'll come to that in the charters, things like licensing, kennels and riding establishments and so on. And also just that kind of promotional message of that, be a responsible pet owner, be a responsible livestock owner, use our land responsibly. If we lease land out, then we want to be assured that people aren't going to be using it for purposes that harm us. So it's that sort of message about support, and also just making sure that we have proposal duties using the wider spectrum takes in other agencies and other responsibilities. So on that basis, we drafted the charter, which on the screen. And just a brief ballot through. So licensing of activities involving animals. Say we've got powers in relation to licensing premises and establishments that carry out activities involving animals, including pet shops, dog breeding establishments, boarding kennels, animal exhibitions and breeding establishments. You'll take our statutory responsibilities seriously and carry out enforcement action. And again, that's part of what our Neighbourhood delivery team do. They go out, they do the inspections of these premises, issue the licenses, and we're happy for that to be transparent and for people to be able to ask us questions, and if they have issues around particular establishments, they can report that to us, and we'll investigate that and make sure that it's being done properly. And we'll publish a list of licensed establishments as well. There's star ratings, I think, Michelle, so depending on the outcome of the inspection, we get star ratings. Stray dog services, we carry that out as well. That's a statutory function of the Borough Council. Again, that's both for the welfare of the dogs themselves and for protection of the community. For the stray dogs. And again, we've got a contract with City Dog School, and we take dogs there. And one out of this is dogs to be reunited with the owners as quickly as possible. And it's easier for dogs. It's a last resort, and it does have to come to that. We want to make sure that our provider is using the most humane methods possible. So, for that arrangement for the dogs. And also, again, educational messages around being responsible pet owners, making sure that if you're going to have a pet, they can provide it with food and water, exercise, and a home that's suitable for it. And then also understanding things about welfare in warm weather, fireworks, nitrogen, nutrient, all the things that you expect. So again, guidance and signposting for people in the charter. Again, giving thought to pets and farm animals and wildlife as part of our civil contingencies responsibilities, and making sure that there's an incident and our plans take into account animals, farm animals or pets. And as I said earlier, council land use. So if people are using our land, leasing our land, and they're doing it responsibly, they're not doing anything that could cause harm. Wildlife, pests and use of pesticides, again, we try to minimise as much as possible the use of pesticides, but if we do have to use them, make sure we're using the ones off the approved list that cause the minimum harm to the environment. And we encourage good environmental management that promotes biodiversity. As Craig mentioned earlier, the local plan policies talk about things like biodiversity net gain, so that the environment will thrive and recover. Ambulance, a big thing in the borough, very popular pastime. And we've had actually for quite a number of years now, we've had ethical fishing guidelines, which encourage anglers to fish responsibly, return the fish to the water, use tackle that's the least harmful. So And then the promotional message around responsible pet ownership, equine welfare, again, working with the RSPCA, for things like tethering horses. It's necessary for short periods, but I think like grooming, knocking out, and short breaks in journeys, but they shouldn't be tethered for one time, and to make sure that they feed water. And then the dangerous wild animals and exotics, again, any keeping an exotic animal should be licensed and know what to do to be able to look after that. So it's almost to encourage government to continue review the exotics list to make sure that village approach. So that's a quick skip through the proposed charter and see it's on your agenda tonight for any comments and ideas that everybody's happy to progress it through to cabinet as well. And I think that one of the questions for tonight is what, as part of the motion at council, there was a recommendation to write to the government to request that the killing of live animals is banned. I think as a lone voice, we might have less impact than maybe trying to canvass some of the other local authorities in Staffordshire and say, do we want to get together and write a joint letter rather than just. So happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wilden.
Okay then. Can I just thank the chair for initiating this quite some time ago with just a thought and a small paragraph. And Michelle, this is absolutely superb. It's every I is dotted and T crossed. All that I will ask is for you to consider, if you look at the 3 recommendations, one of the things that I always notice is that there's only 2 domestic pets that either by accident or design are allowed to wander, and that's cats and dogs. And part of the sort of upscaling, if you like, of abuse of creatures is when we stop paying licenses for dogs. And part of the licence, if that was tied in with a requirement to have them chipped, anyone who'd abandoned a dog, anyone who was the owner of a dog that had committed an act, for example, being off a leash and had affected lambs at lambing time, or had attacked another dog or a person or another creature, farm in the farmyard, it would be easy to track them. So whilst this committee can't do anything, if there's an addendum to 3, whereby we write to the government, we lobby our other neighbourhood boroughs and see what they would think about the reintroduction or consideration of reintroduction of a licence for dogs, and tying that in with chipping. Then we'd know who owned them, who'd done what, and who'd been good and who'd been naughty. We could deal with it more readily. Just asking, would that be worth considering?
The intention is that this moves forward to cabinet, so I think if we want to add in another recommendation or suggestion, then consent with that to cabinet. I think we'd have to look into the mechanics of whether it's feasible and possible.
Oh, I know. I know it's something way that would take some while to do. But while we're considering this, it just adds that extra dimension to it that might be worth considering. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, we can certainly put that, if it's a suggestion that you put forward tonight, we can put that to cabinet when it goes there.
Councillor Diamond.
Thank you, Chair. As a dog owner, the previous dog I owned many years ago did have a licence. She went to the post office and got a licence. After that dog passed away, and obviously I got another dog, it was taken out and it was brought in that you have your dog chipped. And my dog was chipped, and I think the responsibility is to the person that owns the dog, if they move house, to get that chip updated. Because I've seen on social media this last 6 to 8 weeks, so many dogs and cats that have been gone to the vets and the person no longer lives at that address that's chipped. So I think that was the big onus. If you move house, you get that animal rechecked or updated. I don't believe in bringing back licenses.
Just to come back, I think in the charter, we talk about responsible pet ownership, and I think that's probably a part of that, isn't it? If you check your pet, and then you move house, and you're responsible pet owner, should you update that?
Any other councillors wish to comment? I'll just say that, you know, as the person who proposed the original motion, I'm so pleased to see this report and how it's drafted together all our sort of statutory obligations and also our ethical stances on animal welfare in one concise but really well put together, really attractive document. I think it's been great to see. So I'd like to thank you for your work on that. Yeah, I think the whole committee agrees on that. So thank you very much. Right, committee, if we look at the recommendations, I wonder, is it just looking at point number 3, where it says decide if we wish to canvass other local authorities to collectively write? I think, you know, I'd like to propose that we do, you know, that I know there's other councils in Staffordshire, that Moorlands, I think, has already submitted a motion like this. I think, and the Shropshire Council has, I think there's other, I think Stafford Borough Council may be on the card, so I would certainly propose myself that we do canvass other local authorities, because you're quite right in that many voices is better than one. So I wonder if the committee would like to, well, first it's on the second, and then if we can take a vote on it. Yeah, Councillor Wilden seconding. So can I have a show of hands into that? If we approve number 3, that we do canvass other local authorities. Okay. That's carried. Thank you very much. So then looking at the recommendations 1 and 2, does anyone want to make any proposed amendments, or are we happy to submit it unamended to this report for Cabinet? I've seen no proposed amendments, so in that case, can I have a show of hands if happy to submit this report and take its recommendations and submit to Cabinet? Yeah. Thank you very much. Right, thank you. So, looking at the next item on the agenda, number 9 is the work programme, which is on page 139 and 140 of your agenda. Okay. So I want initially to talk about the work programme because Councillor Wilden, I and other Councillor Lewis went to the fire station a few weeks ago, didn't we? And we met with the fire chief, Mark Tatum, and he's offered to come in the new year to our first meeting for the new year and give us an update on the goings on at the Newcastle fire station and their performance, and give us a sort of view of what's going on there and how well they're hitting their targets, especially concerning the 3-man trial that was heard about earlier this year. So he's offered to come and do that. So that's one thing we're going to try and follow the work programme. But I wonder if any of the councillors have any other comments or things for the work programme. Councillor Brown.
It's some time since we heard about tennis provision in the borough, and I'm wondering if that could be scheduled in for an update in terms of where we are on the resurfacing programme.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We could certainly put it in the work programme. I'll also take a look at that. Any other suggestions, please? Councillor Rees.
I ask every Scrutiny committee, any update on the A53 of Busgate?
I believe it says in here that alternative proposal being submitted to Cabinet, so I think we have to wait and see what comes of that before we can comment any further on that, I'm afraid. I know it's frustrating, but I think that's all I can say.
Another thing I was going to raise.
Just hit Michael, Councillor.
Oh, sorry.
Hit Michael, please, Councillor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. I was going to raise it in any of this, but I'm wondering whether it might be more appropriate as part of the work programme. Around the homelessness hub and International House, I understand it went to planning committee last week and permission had been granted, I think, with the condition of a review after 1 year. It's obviously quite a controversial issue. I suppose I'm curious to know why it's not been part of this committee prior to planning, but I'm also wondering whether we ought to have it as a rolling agenda item or maybe on the work plan for kind of for updates so we can monitor that.
Okay, yeah, have to take that into consideration. We'll take that away and we'll get back to you on that one, I think, but that's certainly a good idea. You mentioned earlier about allotments, councillor Rees, so I wonder if you'd perhaps we could think about the allotment updates in a future meeting, would that be something interesting?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we can also put that in the programming update on allotments, waiting lists and provision, yeah. Because you reminded me of when you mentioned, I thought that's a good one.
Yeah.
Any other comments, things to the work programme? Councillor Richards?
Yeah. The state of the different parks in the different wards. So, I mean, in Bradwell, we've got Arnold Grove and we've got Bradwell Lodge and we've got Bradwell Dingle. And it would be good to kind of look at what our overall strategy is for some of the parks and how we're going to kind of move forward with those parks and kind of improve, because we had somebody at the last meeting talking about youth obesity, and it's like, obviously the parks are part of the environment strategy and getting people out and trying to get them fit, and just wondered it would be really good to kind of look at what our plans are really. That makes sense.
Yeah, so updates from streets seen about parks and plans for those.
Yes, I think that will be timely as well, but we also will be looking at our sort of grassland management strategy as well. So that was something I was going to propose that we bring back to this committee. So that would probably usefully tie in.
Okay, Councillor Diamond?
Sorry, could I just add to that as well? I've been actually reporting a small park in my ward, and it's just some of the equipment that it's just, they're only 2 legs things they will remove. I keep wanting to like go down with some WD-40 or to do something to, because I've got stopped again this week, there's people have got it's a little park and they take small children down there and they say it's absolutely lovely, but it's out of the way and you have no trouble. But because some of the pieces of the equipment, I do think that's something, a lot of this old equipment does need looking at.
Can I just ask if it's been reported?
I reported it.
Has it been reported?
It's time for your close and volley.
Okay. Lovely.
I can re-report it if you.
If you wouldn't mind, please, yeah.
I will.
If there are no more, then great, we'll move on to item number 10, public question time, which there are none, and then to business, of which there is none. So, item 12, which is the date of next meeting, which is the 25th of November at 7 p.m. Yeah. So that brings us to the last item on the agenda, and thank you very much to everyone for attending. Have a good evening.